talk about social emotional skills and their importance in early child education. It didn't come from the field of education. This kind of a discourse entered to education actually from the working life. Kids.
We hear a lot about the sandwich, the middle child, and I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Looking at that, we've got oldest, youngest, and middle. I'd love to get your feedback on that.
So you think that the middle child gets less attention, or the first one is unique, the middle is okay, and the last one is right. We know this already, so. This is just my personal opinion, because to be honest, I'm not expert on every area of education. So just to be honest, I know some things better than others. But one thing that is very typical in our field is that we have a lot of, myths in education. And I'm not sure whether this middle child is some kind of a myth. I cannot recall any, research on that there's such a thing as a middle child, and it should be like this or it is like this. Because so many things kind of effect on how we kind of, let's say, encounter or face our children. For example, we know based on the research that we have this kind of tendency or even bias to face boys and girls in a different ways. So it would depend on whether the middle child is a boy or a girl, for example. So this is just one example that there's so many things that had kind of effect on this, how we kind of face the children. So, but my personal advice would be that children should be faced and taken as such as they are, and trying to support every possible way that you can, their learning and development, whether they are the first one or the middle child. So, and if you are worried about that, for example, do you give enough of the attention for the middle child? So it's very good that you actually are aware of this kind of thing, so you can put more effort on that. So to avoid different kinds of biases or gaps, the first thing is that I'm aware of these kind of things. I think, to my opinion, the thing that that this is possible, that's a good start. That's the best start that you can actually have. So you can change the ways that you do things, or give more attention, or this kind of things.
Yeah, so it starts with awareness, yeah, Professor. Yeah. Awareness, which is already there. Yeah, I think all of us.
That's a good way to start, So.
Right, and then treat them as they are. Yeah. I think that's something to take away from.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
you. When I said something about that we have a lot of myths on education,
yeah.
There are like myths, very very heavy myths that relates to our understanding of our brains, for example, that we only use 20% of our brains and not more. So this is a myth, or there's a myth of learning styles, but they are so heavily embedded in our doings and in our cultures, and we just still rely on them. So we just need to get out these kind of myths in education.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. Please, you wanted to ask a question?
So just want to know more about your research and your expertise, of course, when you say about having compassion, empathy in kids. Like, I understand that, of course, I want my kids to have all of that, but why is it important for the early kids to fully embedded in that kind of traits that makes him later on, or makes her later on in the future? Like, why is it so important for in your research, based on your research?
Yep.
Yeah, you get my question right. Thank
I usually answer what I want to answer, so I kind of find the questions myself, and whatever you say, so that's okay. I think the first thing that I want to take up what you said is that it's good to think about that. Okay, if we are doing this and these things, and doing these things, with children, so they will have a successful life later on, or they find a good job, or they make a good money in the future. But we also have to remember that they have to kind of be able to do things in their everyday life, here and now, or with their peers. So it's not only about training kids for the future, but for this particular moment as well, how they get along with their peers in HEI Schools, Jakarta, for example. It's not only about thinking about their future, but also, everyday life. Tomorrow, today. That's how the kids actually live. They don't think about that I'm going to be a minister or politician or a doctor or anything like that. They live, here and now, this particular moment. So I know that you probably all are somehow, worried at what happens, when the kids go to school and how they will manage, and you think about their academic skills, whether they're able to read and write, and should they be able to read and write when they're 4 years old or 5-year-olds? Is that too late? And he can read but my son cannot, and she can read but ours not. There's a lot of talk about academic skills and how competent the kids should be in different ages, so and that also varies between cultures. But another thing that I think that you were referring at least a little bit is that we talk more about this kind of social emotional skills and in emotions. In research, they are currently this kind of hot topic. People talk about soft skills when they talk about future, for example, future work competency. So you need to have soft skills to be able to be a good co-worker, to be able to collaborate with others, and altogether to be able to get along with different kinds of people from different cultures and this kind of thing. So we should not forget that it's not only about trading academic skills or reading and writing, but there's much more in life. We have this kind of idea to think about that. For example, if my child is able to read and write, she or he is ready to go to school. But that's not true, because school is more than reading and writing. And don't get me wrong, reading and writing and be able to read and write, they're actually important skills and important things. But school is more about getting along in a different culture, in a new place, maybe new peers and things like that. And that requires a lot. It requires as much as reading, learning to read and write. So you have to remember also this side of learning and development. Did I say anything about your question? Sorry, Artis. I usually kind of expand the questions a little bit, like trying to build this kind of bigger frame where these things actually belong. And it's interesting to see that when we started to talk about social emotional skills and their importance in early child education, it didn't come from the field of education. This kind of a discourse entered to education actually from the working life. Because the business companies, they started to talk about that, okay, good worker has a social emotional skills. And this requirement for education in a bigger frame, it came from outside of the education field. And this is always good to remember that where these ideas, where they actually originally come from. Do they come from education? Or do they come from somewhere else? And one important question always is that if I'm doing this with my children, who benefits? Is it the child or is it somebody else? Because if you think about it, okay, I need to train my kids with this kind of a competencies and skills and blah, blah, blah. Is this the benefit for the child or benefit for somebody else? That's always that you have to ask. And I know that it's really hard to give up this kind of idea that my child needs to have this kind of competencies and skills, because we actually live in a competitive world. And every parent wants the best for his or her child. So it's not always easy to be a parent, I know that. But how I did with my kids, I'm not sure whether I've been successful or not. It's not about that they actually in university. But what I'm really proud of is about my kids is that they are empathic, they are compassionate, they always want to be on the side of the weak ones. So I think that's enough for me. Whether they are in university or in some other place, as long as they follow their passion, I don't care. I just want to support whatever they want to do. That's has been my duty as a parent and a dad. They'll find their way, and they have found their ways. Not been following me or their mothers. And that's probably the best thing. Yeah, but I think that being let's say raising emphatic and compassionate children, there are several reasons why it is important. It's the basis that how we actually face and treat other people, because empathy means that you understand the world from the perspective of another one. So that's one of the most important things, that I understand that, for example, your life situation. I understand where you come from. I understand how you are feeling. I understand something about your beliefs, your passions, and things like that. You can kind of put yourself in somebody else's shoes, so to say. So that's important. It's about our daily life, how we get along with other people. We would not able to do that without being at least a little bit, emphatic. And for me, compassion, me as a researcher, I kind of separate compassion and empathy. Empathy is, as I said, that it's the ability to put yourself in other one's shoes. And compassion is then, actions based on this understanding. Let me give you this kind of a practical example. If you see a child falling down and he or she starts to cry, so you can have this kind of empathic concern, okay, there's something wrong. And then when you start to do something, you start to help, you start to soothe or stroke or doing things like that. We say that you do this kind of a compassionate act, kind of relieve the suffering or the pain or responding to somebody's needs. And these are actually those things that our everyday life is based on. So a child who understands that, okay, he or she is, feeling feeling this kind of emotions in this particular situation, I can understand him or her. So I can actually soothe, or I can help, or I can protect, or I can give what I actually have. I can share. So that's why they are actually this kind of a. I don't ever use the term trait. It's a very psychological term, and it kind of entails the idea that it's something that is permanent. But you know, this kind of understanding is a dynamic. It changes from situation to another. So it's based on an interaction. It's not something that we are, let's say, built in. Yeah. And I don't, and this is just my personal opinion and based on my own research, that I don't talk about empathic or non-empathic kids. I just want to see that how they actually do things in their everyday life. That's much more important. Not to change, what they are, but perhaps, change the way people do things. And maybe the best pedagogical or parenting idea is that don't try to change the child, change the environment around him or her, and this will do the change later on. Don't try to change, him or her. You probably won't success. But if you change the way you do things, it will change the child as well. So, but empathy and compassion, they're the foundations on our everyday life to get along with other people. So they are just, if you talk about children, they are not just, future skills or anything like that. They are everyday life. Everyday life, how they get along with their peers, with the adults, and so on. That's why they are actually important. And Martha Nussbaum, who is one of the famous, well-known philosophers of our time, says that without compassion and empathy, we would not have any reason, for example, to take care or protect, other people. And she even says that, compassion and empathy are the basic building blocks of democratic societies, based on the idea that we actually understand other people's perspectives.
Okay, thank you, Professor Lasse. I remember earlier you said your children are on the side of the weak. Is that something you mentioned earlier? So that has to do with being empathic and active compassion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, it's a living example of what you just mentioned, right? How you educate your children.
Yeah, and I'm not probably a good example of how to educate own children, but to be honest, when my children were small, I never played with them. When they build, Lego blocks and these kind of things, I was laying on the floor and, moving the car around, this kind of thing. But what I did, replace this kind of thing. So we discussed a lot about different kinds of things. And I read a lot with them. We read books all the time. We had discussion around these books. So, and I cannot emphasize more, the importance of reading stories and books for children. So that's what I did.
Thank you, Professor. Any other question? Yes, please.
Thank you, Professor, for your time.
Later.
I'm interested in different learning styles or learning environments in different cultural contexts. Have you found any differences across the world in your experiences in the way that kids learn, or they need to have a different environment?
Right, there are actually a lot of, cultural variations. So a good example would be, for example, I know Singapore well and I know Finland well, working in both countries. a lot. And the first thing when I kind of recognized in Singapore years ago was it's really competitive society compared to Finland, because it's not an official requirement, but the kids should be able to read when they go to school. They should be able to read when they are, let's say, 5-year-olds already, read and write. And that's not in Finland. In Finland, it's the job of the school to teach them read and write. And the Finnish parents are more like, worried about, whether they have friends and have they eaten and slept well, not about their academic skills. I'm not sure whether this is going to change in the future, because the society in Finland is also getting more competitive. But that's a good example that, and I'm not saying that the Finnish education system is better than Singapore or Indonesia, but they are different in some ways, And if you think about Singapore, which is really competitive, and Finland, which is not so competitive, both have actually, received good results. So there are actually different ways of getting and having good results in a way. So, but cultural differences are. But I probably would say that maybe the education systems are getting a bit similar in different countries, and it's because of this globalization. And there are some other reasons as well, because because as I said before, that we talk more and more about working life skills, and this kind of discourse goes down to early child education as well. So we started thinking about what should I do that my child gets a good life and good working place, and this has kind of a consequences, because if we know that social emotional skills, let's say this is an example, that social emotional skills are the skills of a good future worker. So and in a global world, everybody knows this. So it means that every education system starts to train this kind of skills and competencies, so they come close and close to each other. So maybe the education systems, despite these cultural variations, are little by little coming closer to each other in this global world. This is just my sophisticated guess, based also on research what we already know. It's a good question, because one of my hobbies is that I try to follow this kind of a global trends in education. So what is happening all around the world, and trying to figure out these weak signals, what is happening in different sides of society and disciplines, because we know that this kind of discourses, they go around the world, and if they start, for example, business life, they will enter in education in a form or another. That's what always happens. And if we do something in the United States or in these kind of big countries, these kind of ideas, they will travel around the world, and we pick up what we pick up from these discourses. And this sounds a little bit abstract, but it goes to your children as well in some states, because it's a global world and ideas go round and round. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong or right, but that's how things are.
Interesting, Professor Lasse. So you're saying that eventually there will be similarities between
there are similarities. This is my sophisticated guess.
Interesting.
But these kind of I don't think, and I hope that we don't lose a certain kind of cultural variations in how we do things, because then it's also true that different countries, different nations, they need different things as well.
Thank you. There was a question at the back. Yes, please.
Hi, Prof.